Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to Valentine's Views here on the Big Blue View YouTube channel. As we get closer and closer to the NFL draft, I'm thrilled today to be joined by a guest I have tried to trick into being on this show for a long time now. I'm joined today by Tyler Dunne of the fantastic website golongtd.com. And Ty, thank you very, very much for making some time.
Ed, it's a pleasure to be here. As the great George Costanza said, it's not you, it's me. Life changes with 4.5 and 2.5 year olds, and I swear every day is a game of Tetris, kind of fitting it all together, running go long, the podcast, interviews, transcribing, exterior podcast stuff. But it is a
Hey,
pleasure to be here. You do fantastic work. I've always loved coming on when we've had giant stories at Go Long. So thanks so much for having me, man.
well, hey, thank you for the kind words, and my days of juggling those little ones are done. Mine are grandkids now, and I get to give them back, and when they're here and they're rambunctious and they're out of control, I look at my wife and I say, this is your fault. You deal with
See, we can't just pawn off, right? It is. I played that role as an uncle. I have an older sister who has two kids that are a few years older than ours. I remember that. You can kind of sub in. You're like Robert Ory. At the end of a game, you just come in, you hit the three. You're a playoff legend. But it's really, Shaq and Kobe. They're doing the heavy lifting on those teams. Or Tim Duncan and Tony Park with the Spurs. So, kind of moving into that role. It's fun. There's nothing like it. We've got
it.
Ella's artwork right behind me, so I'll be adding to that collection as they get
There you
older.
go. One of my granddaughters, all of her stuff is in front of me. So our viewers don't get to see all that. They just get to see a nice, mostly blank wall behind me. But anyway, let's get into Giants. Let's get into the NFL draft, and I want to ask you this. You've been doing this for a little bit now. Um, I'm I look at this draft, and I'm just insanely interested in how all of this is going to work out. I can't remember a year where you could listen to Adam Schefter and he gives you one complete set of this is what I think is going to happen. And then you listen to Pete Schrager and he gives you a completely different set of what's going to happen. And then you listen to Ian Rappaport or Albert Breer, and it's something else. I can't remember a year where the insiders, the folks that you would think would pretty much have this pinned down as we get closer, have such disagreement about how this is all going to work out. I mean, I'm just curious what your thoughts are there.
So I live in Western New York, and had the chance to really see everything Brian Daboll did with Josh Allen. It was actually central to part three of our McDermott problem series. I mean, you had something special with Allen, with Daboll. I mean, that had the potential, I guess, in my opinion, but I think in the opinion of people very close to the situation, to be a Reed Mahomes kind of connection to Belichick Brady, a special union in its own way, because I think Daboll understood Allen and what makes him great, better than anybody. Josh Allen is a backyard quarterback, right? He wants to run through your face. He wants to make inappropriate jokes in the locker room. There's nobody like him, and I think that Dabe's got him. So to answer your question, that's where I'm coming at with Brian Daboll. And with Joe Shane, I talked to him for about, I don't know, over an hour last year for a feature at Go Long, and that off season, and then tying it to his upbringing, growing up in Indiana, those high school gyms, and the pressure he faced there, and what led to Josh Allen from his seat next to Brandon Beane, and what led to those really big decisions last off season. So I'm just trying to piece it all together myself with actions versus words. I haven't talked to either person this offseason, nor would they in a million years broadcast their plans to me, to Adam Schefter, to Peter Schrager, to Ian anybody. It's too big of a decision at number 6 overall. So I'm just trying to approach this from, okay, what have we seen from Brian Daboll in Buffalo and the Giants? What have we seen from Joe Shane in his past and what he's done so far? Look, the Daniel Jones contract was so unique. I don't need to rehash everything. I'm sure your listeners and your viewers, they know they've gotten the full breakdown from Ed. But like, I understood the deal. I thought it made a
Mhm.
lot of sense. I thought he played pretty damn well. Yeah, there's some smoke and mirrors involved, but he was healthy. Um, Dave's kind of figured him out. He didn't have a lot around him, and he played well in 2022. 2023 is an absolute cluster, you know what, in every conceivable way. So I think financially, that investment you want to see it through to a point. Like you want to give him the opportunity to start if he's healthy and see what he has. But Dave's and Joe Shane, they went through this with Josh Allen. They're going to want their guy. I don't necessarily think their seats are hot. Maybe you can tell me. I'm not sure where fans are with this all. I feel like they've still built up goodwill here to see this thing through. But how many bites of the apple do you get to get your quarterback? I mean, they brought in all these quarterbacks on visits. They've been scouting them relentlessly, I'm sure. And I'm sure we're gonna get into it. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I just see Drake May, and I see Drake May, and I see Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, and I think Dave's would love to get his hands on him if he could. Takes two to tango. We'll see if a trade's even possible. I do think they're gonna at least try to move up to take Drake May, and that's a gut feeling, and kind of reading and putting this jigsaw puzzle together as much as anything.
Yeah, it's funny that you went there. I think, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think if the Washington Commanders choose Jaden Daniels, and we know that these things, these moves up the board don't happen. Joe Shane's not going to call Elliott Wolf with 5 minutes to go before the pick needs to get turned in and say, hey, why don't we talk about making a trade? We know that those things are already being talked about. We know that there's parameters that are already being discussed. I read Monday morning, I think, that the Patriots are quote unquote asking for an unprecedented deal to give up number 3. And of course they would. They may not get an unprecedented deal if they do want to move down, but of course they would ask for that. You ask for the moon, until until you realize that the best offer you're going to get is a bag of rocks.
Right. It's no different than
But
fantasy football at the end of the day, right? Like it's
mhm,
trying to take advantage of a buddy in your league and hope he's a few IPAs deep.
right, but there you go. But I I agree with you that I think there's too many parallels, and I don't know about personality between Drake May and Josh Allen, but there's too many parallels in terms of physical traits, from the arm to the size, the build, the mobility. Although, I think taking Drake May and trying to run him up the middle on QB power would not be a smart thing. Of course, hey Dave's, neither was trying to go quarterback sneak with Daniel Jones on a 4th and 1 the week he came back from his latest neck injury. That wasn't too smart either there, Dave's, but that was done. So, but anyway, you've got all those physical parallels, and then you have the parallels coming out of college. Nobody, or not nobody, but there was all the parallels about, well, Josh Allen's not accurate. His completion percentage is terrible. His decision making isn't good. He throws too many he throws too many balls into trouble. And you hear all of those same things about Drake May. And I just think Brian Daboll has to be sitting there thinking, as you said, if I can get my hands on this kid, I was successful with this model once. I built this model once. I can do it again. I know how to deal with this. So I think, I think Drake May is the guy that they would push their chips to the table for.
I totally agree. I think they're going to look at all these quarterbacks. I mean, you have to have a full panoramic view of all of their strengths, all of their weaknesses. And for all we know, JJ McCarthy is the quarterback they're smitten with. I'm not sure. Maybe they even love a Bo Nix, a Michael Penix, and think maybe we can get cute, right? Maybe we can go Neighbors at 6 and try to finagle our way up the draft board with our second rounder and get one of those guys. I think if you're going to go quarterback, though, you're going to be aggressive. And if they're going to go quarterback, everything tells you it would be a Drake May. I mean, that is such a good point. I mean, Josh Allen was such a raw project here in Buffalo. And Joe Shane would be the first to tell you that is not who the fans wanted in Western New York at all. We actually discussed this a little bit.
I was going to ask you about if I recall the reaction to Josh Allen in Western New York in the Buffalo area. It wasn't good.
No, I have so my brother was at the Bills draft party with some of his friends, and he still jokes about it, and he has a video of it actually of the reaction to the pick, and it is disappointment. It is abject disappointment and groans and moans and some faint cheers and anger. I mean, I think that the Bills had been through this for 2 decades. They've drafted quarterbacks, they've signed quarterbacks, they've traded for them. None of them have worked, and they didn't like the idea of, and you start talking about a quarterback's hand size, and they start getting the trauma from EJ Manuel when Buddy Nix took him 16th overall, and he was just so dang so raw that there was such a hunger for Josh Rosen because it was a big program and a pocket passer, and he had that confidence, that swagger, air quotes. And you have to give Brandon Beane and Joe Shane all the credit in the world for it took guts. I mean, I'm telling you, I live here. It took guts. There was a radio producer at WGR locally here, Ryan Gates, great guy, and maybe he kind of had another job lined up or as a possibility. Anyways, it was fun on the air. He said, if the Bills draft Josh Allen, I'm going to quit my job. And he did. He left the business.
Wow.
Jerry Sullivan, the columnist in town. I mean, I've been reading him since I was a kid. He always has strong opinions on the quarterback position. I mean, he was just really speaking for the fans. Honestly, I know Sully makes fans feel a certain way sometimes. He was speaking for them and saying they took the wrong Josh. And Joe Shane still has that article, I know, as GM of the Giants. So they're going to be unafraid to take a chance. They'll be unafraid to draft Drake May, and also to give up a ton for Drake May. I think that Brandon Beane put it best at his press conference at the Combine, where I can't remember who asked him. It might have been a Giants reporter. You were there too, Ed. He was asked to the extent of giving up a lot to move up and get your quarterback, and he's like, nope. His words. He said, nobody gives a shit if you hit the quarterback. If you get the quarterback, nobody cares what it took to get him. So I got to think one of his best friends, if not his best friend in the business, Joe Shane, subscribes to the same belief.
Well, it is one of those things because we've talked about this a lot at Big Blue View. The Giants only have 6 draft picks. If they're going to make that move up is probably going to cost them a 2025 first round pick. It might cost them a 2026 first round pick. It's going to cost them a lot. But you're 100% right. Nobody cares if you get it right. If you get it right, you've got Josh Allen. If you get it right, you have Eli Manning. The Giants, Ernie Accorsi made his career. Giants fans still love Ernie Accorsi for the Manning trade.
Yep.
That left the Giants with 4 draft picks the following year. They had 4 picks. They were very, very fortunate. They hit home runs on 3 of those 4 picks. But nobody cares if you get it right. If you get it wrong, you're getting fired. Because your team's not going to be good. But the other thing is, if you don't take the swing and you stink anyway for the next couple of years, you're still getting fired. So, so for me, if they love Drake May, if they love JJ McCarthy, which if it's JJ McCarthy they trade up for, I think fans will be going to 1925 Giants Drive in East Rutherford and trying to torch the building, which they can't, by the way, because it's brick. So, but
you're thinking they're 3 steps ahead of the fan base.
If they get it right, if they get it right, nobody's going to care. So that's 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 how that is. I mean, let me ask you. The great JJ McCarthy question. Does he go before the Giants, after the Giants, or to the Giants?
I think after the Giants. That's a great. I love the way you framed it because there's going to be movement. There's going to be a level of urgency from the Giants, obviously, but the Vikings, the Raiders, the Broncos, maybe, and wanting to rush up for their guy. But how much do these teams really like JJ McCarthy? That's what we don't really know. So, Bob McGanny's been doing his draft series for 40 years now. He runs it at my site, and the scouts are understandably torn on McCarthy. But I was honestly a little surprised to see the love for JJ McCarthy. I mean, these are scouts giving it to Bob straight. I mean, guys, he's trusted over the years. There are people who do buy into the intangible stuff, right? The winning, the getting past Ohio State, the fact that when it was third down and Jim Harbaugh asked him to pass the ball, he completed that pass. I think he was the most efficient quarterback of this whole group on third down.
Mm-hmm.
So you can talk yourself into JJ McCarthy. Gosh, I have a hard time thinking though that there's an NFL team that views and values JJ McCarthy as worthy of a top 5 pick. I could be wrong. Right? I just feel like there's too many Marvin Harrison Jr., right? Malik Neighbors, even a Joe Alt. I mean, players in different positions that have so much more substantive value with less risk than taking JJ McCarthy that high. Denver a little later on can see that. Like, I have no clue if the Giants like JJ McCarthy. Maybe they do. As you could probably hear in my voice, I mean, that's the JJ McCarthy debate, right? You can kind of
Right.
talk yourself in circles and zig and zag. I
Here's the
I
thing.
just don't see it myself. I feel it feels like a really good college quarterback
The
who, in
thing
the right
about
situation, maybe he's great. But
right.
I don't know. I don't think he elevates everybody else.
The thing about the whole debate is we haven't seen JJ McCarthy have to be the best player on the field. And that's because he didn't have to be that at Michigan. He had to make plays at key times. But when you look at Drake May, you look at the traits and tools and the physical skills and all of that, and you think, man, he could bust. But boy, if he gets it right, what is that going to look like? That is going to look spectacular if he gets it right. I like JJ McCarthy, but I have a hard time like trading a whole bunch of assets and going up and going after him. I have a hard time if he's sitting there at 6, fine, but I have a hard time trading a whole bunch of assets to go get the guy just because we haven't seen it yet.
I think that's where the Giants should be too. Like if you stay there and he's there, I still don't know if I would take him, especially if Harrison or Neighbors is there. But I would understand the pick too, because to take a wide receiver, you might as well be drafting Daniel Jones again. Like you are kind of tripling down with that pick. Now they could come back around and take a quarterback in the second, but then it's like you're trying to check every box. And if you're trying to check every box, you might get kind of lost in mediocrity. I kind of like the balls to the wall, Drake May, go for it scenario. But if they do stay at 6 and JJ McCarthy is there and he does go to the Giants, I wouldn't bet against Brian Daboll either. Like I think he is the best teacher of the position in the NFL. I mean, and we saw it with Allen. You saw it with Daniel Jones to an extent. I was actually talking to Tiki Barber about this last week, and he is he defends Daniel Jones to a point. He still kind of believes in Daniel Jones with the injury caveat, but also agreed, like, look, if Daves was able to do this with Daniel Jones, get that season out of him, imagine what he could do with his own guy, with a totally different set of physical traits and athleticism, and it's like a clean slate, everything. So whether that's May or McCarthy or Penix or Nix, anybody, Jaden Daniels, I mean, who the hell knows? I would count on that player succeeding. So
Yeah,
I guess I would, whether it's JJ or not, take a quarterback. It's in that first
it's
round.
it's interesting. I have a couple of things that I wanted to throw at you here. Daniel Jones. Yeah, we hear Rich Eisen say, "Oh, the Giants have buyer's remorse and they're done with Jones and this and that." I don't necessarily think that's the case. I do think it's crystal clear that Joe has said, "Look, we have confidence in him for 2024." He has not said a word about after 2024, which I think is clearly a tell that they don't know today who their quarterback is in 2025. Um, and I'm not done with Daniel Jones. I think 2022 Jones is is in there. I still think it's in there. But what I'd say is, look, it's been 5 years, been up, it's been down. It hasn't been what you wanted to get out of a sixth overall pick in the draft. He's got 1 year left on his contract in terms of guaranteed money. If if you're able to get a guy, you got to get a guy, because this, you may not be in position to do it a year from now. You may, so if you're in position to do it, just do it. Um, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, one of the cool things about this draft process has been that on YouTube, online, we're seeing a lot of former NFL quarterbacks do a lot of analysis. We've seen Kurt Warner, we've seen Chase Daniel, we've seen Colt McCoy do a lot of it. One of the guys doing a lot of it and getting a lot of notoriety for it is Kurt Benkert. And Benkert said recently that he would feel sorry for any quarterback that landed with the Giants because he doesn't think it's a good situation for a young quarterback. I assume with what you've said about Brian Daboll that you would disagree with that.
Yeah, vehemently, right? I didn't see that, and I actually, gosh, when he was with the Packers, I did a long Q&A with Ben Kurt. He is an interesting guy, like where he comes from, and well traveled in the NFL, kicking around different practice squads as a third stringer, but really smart. He is worth a listen or a watch. Like if you can watch his breakdowns of quarterbacks, and he thinks outside the box. So I'm not sure what his justification for that was, having not seen it, but God, I mean, I mean, if the argument is weaponry, okay, like they could use a receiver, which makes this whole conversation that much more interesting. That they need somebody outside, but in terms of coaching and scheme, I don't know. I mean, hell, maybe I'm still drunk off that Daboll Kool-Aid here in Buffalo, seeing it, but. Even like there were even moments last year. I mean, they should have beat the Bills here at Highmark Stadium. I mean, Tyrod Taylor outplayed Josh Allen for the most of that game, and had them in position to win the game. If was it Taron Johnson? If he's called for DPI, different story. If Tyrod doesn't check to the run at the 1 yard line at the end of the first half, different story. I mean, Tommy DeVito, like what he's even done with some of these guys is really impressive. I don't get that at all. I honestly feel like if you can get an athletic, a physical talent, somebody that's got some raw stuff to him, this is a great spot. I mean, even Brett Favre. I mean, I've talked to Favre about this. He had Daboll with the Jets in '08, and it was, the final numbers might not look that great, but at one point they were 9-3. The Jets were a Super Bowl contender, and then that's when Brett tore his bicep and everything went to hell. I mean, Daboll was like a young quarterback coach at that time, and he was breaking down once on our show like all the different ways Daboll made life simpler for him, terminology wise. Just he can make complicated things very digestible. But beyond all of that, it's the person. Like, when he's all over Tyrod at halftime, I think if people who don't have a clue are irate over that, like, oh my God, I can't believe Brian Daboll would show up his quarterback on national TV. That's awful. But gosh, every player in Buffalo that I've talked to, they love the guy. I mean, he developed such real relationships with players that he can do that. Like he's got a license to do that. They're okay with him getting on him because he's going to love you up as well. He's going to be real. He's going to be authentic. This isn't a robot. This isn't somebody reading a manual on how to be a head coach and trying to, mechanically do what he thinks you're supposed to do. He's himself. So I would want to play for a coach like that and a quarterback teacher like that. And the Giants they're in good hands with both of these guys running the show.
All right, Ty. I think that's a good place for us to call it a day. Why don't you let folks know where they can find you on social media, how they can find and go along, how they can subscribe, all that fun stuff. Because folks, if you're not catching Ty's work, you're missing out. So let folks know where they can find it.
Thanks so much, Ed. Always great catching up. Enjoyed it. GoLongTD.com. You can sign up to the free list if you want, and you'll get occasional features and columns here and there. Or subscribe. It's just $8 a month, $50 a year to get all of our player profiles, deep dives on teams. Maybe some folks remember a certain autopsy on those Giants a few years back. But always try to check in on the Giants whenever possible. And yeah, actually, caught up with Tiki Barber recently, so we'll get that live as well. But that's probably the best place. And for those on social media, just at Ty Dunne on X.
And tell Bob McGinn that when he gets tired of working for you, he can come and publish his stuff for me.
Dude, I don't know if that guy's ever gonna stop. It blows me away. I mean, he turns in those stories to me at like 3-4 a.m. I mean, his work ethic is just insane. For gosh, I don't even know how many years. It's been 40 years doing the series, but he's been covering the NFL since the 70s. He's a machine. So no, Ed, I'm gonna hold on to him with a death grip until he
good for you as you should. All right, Ty, thank you very, very much. And Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please stay safe out there, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.